Welcome to This Explainer. Okay, let's dive right into one of history's most fascinating mysteries. Today, we're going to piece together the archaeological clues of the Indus Valley Civilization. We're taking a really comprehensive journey here, literally zooming in from the massive macro-geographical scale of their empire all the way down to the micro level, looking at the actual bones of its citizens. So whether you're trying to navigate the whole Indus-Saraswati debate, prepping for a major history exam, or you're honestly just curious about how ancient people lived, worked, and thrived, you are in the right place. This is basically a brilliant detective story, and the clues are written in mud brick and fossilized remains.
But hey, before we can explore their towering cities, we need to figure out how they even got there in the first place, right? So let's kick things off with a quick question to see where this massive Bronze Age civilization actually began. Do you know which site gave us the very first hints of settled farming that made all those future cities possible?
If you guessed Mehrgarh, you nailed it. Located near the Bolan Pass and dating all the way back to 7000 BCE, Mehrgarh acts as the true Neolithic precursor to the Indus Valley civilization. Long before those grand urban centers existed, it was right here that the crucial agricultural surplus was established. The domestication of cattle and the cultivation of wheat and barley in this literal breadbasket laid the vital foundation for the incredible society that was about to emerge. Now, what's totally wild about the discovery of all this is how close modern explorers came to uncovering the civilization, only to completely miss the point. For nearly a century, it was basically a comedy of errors. Back in 1826, Charles Masson stumbled upon Harappa, but he just thought it was some ruinous brick castle. Then, in the 1850s, an engineer named William Brunton literally plundered these ancient, perfectly baked bricks to build a railway line. No way, right? And even Alexander Cunningham, who was conducting trial excavations later in the century, was mostly just searching the ruins for a Buddhist stupa. They were literally standing on top of a forgotten world and had absolutely no idea. It really wasn't until the 1920s that the massive breakthrough happened. Archaeologists Dayram Sani in 1921 and R.D. Banerjee in 1922 finally realized what they were looking at. Excavating Harappa on the banks of the Ravi River and Mohenjo-daro on the Indus, they unearthed the twin capitals of a complex society that predated almost everything previously known in the region. Which brings us to a huge date to remember, 1924. This is when John Marshall, the Director General of the Archaeological Survey, formally announced the discovery of the Indus Valley Civilization to a completely stunned global public. Practically overnight, human history had to be rewritten to include this magnificent, newly discovered Bronze Age society. All right, let's zoom out for a second and just look at the staggering physical scale of what they actually found. We aren't just talking about a couple of isolated cities here. The Harappan Civilization stretched a massive 1,500 kilometers from east to west and 1,400 kilometers from north to south. That's covering over 8 lakh square kilometers.
Just imagine trying to coordinate a society across this massive footprint. The civilization commanded an enormous territory, anchored securely by specific river systems at its absolute extreme edges. Up in the north, you have Manda on the Chenab River. Down south, there's Daimabad on the Prava River. Alamgirpur sits on the Hindon River out to the east, and all the way out west on the Pakistan-Iran border is Sudkagandur on the Dasht River. It was a massive, brilliantly connected network.
And the complete historical arc of this civilization brilliantly illustrates just how dynamic they were. It wasn't static at all. It evolved across 3 distinct phases. First, you've got the early phase, starting around 3300 BCE, featuring organic, small villages. This eventually blossoms into the famous mature phase, those full-fledged, integrated urban cities with gridiron planning, the mysterious Harappan script, and extensive trade. Finally, after 1900 BCE, we hit the late phase, which is marked by de-urbanization, a noticeable decline in brick quality, and the disappearance of their script and standard weights as people shifted eastward back to smaller rural settlements.
But amidst all this dramatic change, from scattered villages to booming metropolises and then back down to rural settlements, what fundamental aspect of their daily lives do you think never changed?
The answer is their subsistence economy. And guys, this is a vital takeaway, especially if you're studying this for an exam. No matter how grand their cities became or how much their administrative state eventually fractured, the Harappans always remained deeply rooted in agriculture and animal herding.
That foundational surplus we saw at Mehrgarh, that was the beating heart of their society for 2,000 years.
During that incredible mature peak, they perfectly hit the major milestones of historian Gordon Child's urbanization theory. Because the farmers produced a massive surplus of food, it freed up other citizens to do other things. They transformed from simple farmers into a highly complex society with specialized full-time laborers. We're talking merchants, craftspersons, and officials. They developed writing, concentrated wealth in monumental public buildings, and established vast, long-distance trade networks.
And you can literally see this complex state organization right in their architecture. They didn't just build robust walls, they created world-class urban sanitation systems with covered drains, soak pits, and street-level manholes that wouldn't be seen again anywhere in the world for centuries. They utilized perfectly standardized baked bricks in a strict 1:2 to 4 ratio to construct their gridiron streets and water reservoirs. Honestly, this level of standardization across hundreds of miles implies a highly organized central authority managing all their construction and public health.
However, while the cities were highly standardized, they definitely weren't boring or entirely uniform. Beyond the massive capital cities, dozens of regional sites featured fascinating, unique quirks. Over in Aropyar, we find evidence of a dog buried alongside a human. Banawali totally breaks the gridiron rule with unusual radial street patterns, plus it features clay models of plows. And we can't forget Dholavira's incredible water harvesting systems, or the sheer massive steel of Rakhigarhi. Kote Digi hosts the largest stone tools, and at Surkotata we see distinct pot burials. Each site adds its own unique flavor to the wider Harappan culture.
Now let's zoom way out to their incredible trade network. Have you heard of Shortugai? It's located near the Oxus River in northeast Afghanistan. What's absolutely incredible here is that the archaeological record proves this wasn't just a casual trading partner they occasionally visited. With its typical Harappan artifacts and architecture, Shortugai was an actual dedicated Harappan colony situated far, far beyond their primary borders. The evidence recovered from this 2-hectare Afghan outpost is just amazing. They basically brought their home with them. We see typical Harappan mud bricks, pottery designs, and even a square Harappan seal featuring a rhinoceros motif. They adapted to the local landscape by utilizing dry farming techniques with flax seeds, and they dug extensive irrigation canals drawing water from 25 kilometers away. All of this intense effort was likely to aggressively pursue precious resources nearby, specifically lapis lazuli and tin. Transitioning from trade to spirituality, we see that religious practices across the wider Harappan world were surprisingly varied. At the Kalibangan citadel, archaeologists found a row of 7 clay-lined fire altars next to a pit of cattle bones, heavily suggesting large congregational animal sacrifices and community rituals. But at sites like Lothal or Amri, fire altars seem to be exclusively associated with small, private, domestic household rituals. And while we don't find massive temples or palaces, incredible art pieces like the Dancing Girl or the famous Pashupati seal strongly hint at complex, nature-based, or proto-Shiva belief systems. There definitely wasn't just one single way to worship. Now, to truly understand these ancient people on an intimate level, we have to look beyond the bricks and the altars. We need to look at their actual bones. During the 1980s and 90s, a team of physical anthropologists meticulously excavated Cemetery R37 in the southern part of Harappa. They recovered 90 skeletons, mostly female, representing various age groups from young children to older adults. So, what does the forensic analysis tell us? Well, it paints a really vivid picture of a day in the life of a Harappan. The good news? They had overall good health, with remarkably low rates of trauma, tumors, or nutritional diseases like scurvy. The bad news? They worked incredibly hard. There was a high frequency of severe arthritis in the spine, knees, and notably the neck, almost certainly the result of carrying heavy loads on their heads over long periods. Furthermore, their grain-heavy agricultural diet took a massive toll on their teeth, with high rates of missing enamel and a staggering 43.6% of individuals suffering from dental cavities. Ouch. Interestingly, statistical analysis of these crania proves something pretty remarkable, a direct biological continuity. You see, the descendants of the Harappans never vanished into thin air when their civilization declined. There is a strong biological link connecting the inhabitants of the mature phase to the late phase right up into the modern populations inhabiting the area today. They didn't disappear, they simply adapted as their society changed. Which leaves us with one final profound mystery to consider today. If the people themselves survived and their core agricultural subsistence economy never changed,
Why did they completely abandon their magnificent grid-iron urban centers during the late phase? Was it shifting rivers, climate change, or the collapse of global trade? The bones and the bricks give us some incredible clues, but the true end of Harappan urbanization remains one of history's greatest unsolved puzzles, and for sure, a favorite topic for historical debates and exams alike. Thanks for exploring this amazing explainer with me today, and keep questioning the past.